All right, good morning all. A very warm welcome to SkillsFuture Singapore's Job Skills Insights webinar. Today, on the Transformation and Reskilling Industry Series, we will be talking about Rewarding for Skills with Willis Towers Watson. I am Kelsey from the Skills Development Division at SkillsFuture Singapore, and I will be your MC this morning. Together with me are my colleagues, Glenn and Matthew. Before I proceed, let me share a little more about SkillsFuture Singapore, or SSG for short. SSG aims to provide all Singaporeans with opportunities for lifelong learning. We believe in the skills, passion, and contribution of each and every individual and see them as drivers of Singapore's next phase of development towards an advanced economy and a more inclusive society. With this, SSG provides a wide variety of resources to help one attain skills mastery at every stage of their life. These aim to help individuals like yourselves make informed decisions when expanding skill sets in professional and career development. It seems that we have about 100 people, 98 I see, joining us today. Our audience comes from different enterprises, institutes of higher education, the wider public, and SSG itself. Again, a big welcome to all. Before we begin, allow me to go through some administrative details. This entire webinar will take about an hour. It will occur in two main segments, a presentation followed by a dialogue session between our speakers where questions will be addressed. During the webinar, attendees are muted. However, you can post your questions anytime by using the Q&A option on your screen. You can also upvote questions that you want answered, and the speakers will do their best to address them. If we are unable to answer your questions during the main session, please be assured that we will address them via email after the webinar. This webinar session will be recorded and published on the My SkillsFuture portal, SSG's LinkedIn page, and SSG's YouTube channel. Finally, slides shared during the webinar will be sent to all attendees via email. With that, let me introduce our topic for today. The changing nature of work and ever-shifting skill requirements have prompted human resources and reward professionals to move beyond role-based compensation frameworks. With the new focus on work and skills, there is an increasing need to attract and retain employees with critical skills, particularly hot digital skills. So, how are employers currently rewarding for skills? What does this new approach entail? How can organizations move forward? Today, our speakers will discuss these questions and share some tips on how SMEs can implement compensation for a skills-based approach. Without further ado, let me introduce Edwin Tan, our moderator for today. Edwin leads a team of job skills analysts and solutionists in SSG. His team works closely with sector agencies, industry partners, training providers, and innovation-led firms. Together, they develop timely and fit-for-purpose job skills insights that can signal priorities for the workforce and skills transformation. Edwin, please.
Thank you, Kelsey, for that. A warm welcome to everyone who has taken time to join us for today's webinar. Today, we are privileged to have with us Ms Sonia Liew from Willis Towers Watson to share her insights on jobs and skills premium. Sonia is a rewards practice leader with Willis Towers Watson Singapore. She has close to 15 years of experience in consulting with a main focus in work and rewards, where she helped clients to articulate and redesign their reward strategy, reward and career framework, incentive plans, among others. Sonia has partnered with clients from a wide range of industry globally, from retail and F&B to financial services, high-tech and global conglomerates. And with that, I would like to invite Sonia to take the floor to share with us on the topic of rewarding for skills. Sonia, please.
Thank you, Edwin. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sonia Liew, and I'm very honored to be here with all of you this morning to share some insights on the trends that we're seeing in the market when it comes to rewarding for skills. Now, if you go to the next slide, but before we get into the details around rewarding for skills, I wanted to first address the most important point on the why. Why do companies reward for skills? So based on a recent survey that we've conducted sometime in April this year, we asked our survey participants, what are some of the main reasons that have led them to decide to reward for skills? If you look at the chart here on the right side, with the purple and the amber bar representing most relevant and very relevant respectively, we see that a significant majority of respondents are paying for skills in order to support, number one, digital transformation agenda, number two, retention, and number three, attraction. As we know, many organizations today, be it large or small, global or local, we're all going through our own digital transformation journey. Some of us are scrambling to establish an e-commerce platform. Some are finding ourselves needing to fundamentally shift in the way we interact with our customers or revamp our products and solutions. So it's not so much about transformation just for the sake of transforming or for profitability alone. For some of these organizations, we see that the need to transform is so that you can survive. It's a matter of survival. This in turn, led to a strong demand that we see in the market for specialized skills, and mostly these are digital skills, in order to help drive some of the transformation efforts of the organizations. So in the next slide, we see that 9 out of 10 organizations say that they are facing challenges attracting and retaining these talent. Again, this is one of our survey findings. Now let that sink in for a little bit, right? That's quite a huge statement to talk about, if you're finding it challenging to attract and retain these digital talent. And in the next slide, we actually took a deeper dive on Asia Pacific alone. And we see that the story here is just as consistent. Almost all countries admitted to the difficulties in digital talent attraction and retention. And in the last 3 years, we know that with the rise of fintech industry, as well as companies embarking on their digital transformation journey, companies have already felt this struggle to attract and retain digital talent. And this has only escalated further since the pandemic. The shortage for this talent is at a global scale, as we can see, and the competition is intense, and it will continue to intensify. And if you find yourself struggling to attract and retain these digital talent, I'd say you are not alone, right? As a result of this intense competition, we started to see various approaches that organizations have adopted in order to compete for these talents. And we've listed some of these approaches in the next slide. At a quick glance, you will see that these are all different ways one can adopt to pay more, essentially, each with its own set of considerations. Some companies went with broad levels and broad ranges. Some introduced separate pay scales to kind of have a premium pay scales for some of this digital talent. Some others chose to approach this through allowances paid on top of salaries, or separate pay elements such as hiring bonus, retention bonus, or equity grants are also some of the examples that we see out there. So for those companies who couldn't make policy changes fast enough, we also see that the Band-Aid approach, so-called, of anchoring at a higher grade, which is not recommended, by the way, as it affects the integrity of the grade structure. But that's the reality of what some companies had to do to cope with the competition. And when it comes to paying for hot jobs, rewarding for skills, we know that we most likely need to pay more. But do we know what are we paying for? Right? When companies pay for hot jobs, what does that really mean? What is a hot job? Because we're consultants, we like to run surveys, and we've also asked our global clients on the defining characteristics of a hot job. And the findings are quite interesting, as you will see in the next slide. So what makes a job hot? So we can go to the next slide. You will see that our survey respondents mentioned some of the reasons that are the defining characteristics of a hot job. So the top 3 reasons, which are all kind of interrelated here, we see that the first one is scarcity of talent. When demand for talent outgrows the supply, and hence the scarcity of talent is one of the main key defining characteristics of a hot job. Secondly, we see mission critical jobs. So we talk about digital transformation, and these are most likely jobs that are really critical in helping the organizations achieve their mission of transforming digitally. And some of these jobs that are in the heart and center of digital transformation are those jobs that we tend to see being listed as hot jobs. Also, we tend to see the new or emerging tech jobs, or new and emerging skills are, the usual suspects for hot jobs. And this all brings us back to the whole low supply and hence the scarcity of talent, right? And now that we've explored a little bit on the idea of the key characteristics of, the kind of jobs that will command a premium in the market, the next question is how much to pay, right? How much to pay for these hot jobs out there? Where do I get the market information for this? Again, we ask our global clients, and in the next slide, you will see we ask our clients what are the sources of data that they refer to when making decisions on paying for hot jobs. Without surprises, our survey reveals that the trustee compensation surveys are still the most dominant data source for tracking hot jobs. And the next source of information you can see is staffing companies or recruiters. These are all, practical sources of information to help organizations better understand the market premiums that's going on outside for what kind of jobs. But increasingly, some of our clients are looking for the next level of granularity when it comes to rewarding for skills. So for these organizations, they find that traditional surveys are a good place to start, but they may not be sufficient to understand specific skill premium because that's what they're looking for nowadays. So for example, we know that Python programming skill is an emerging skill. It is highly sought after, and it's commanding a pay premium. Say if I'm looking to hire a data scientist with Python programming skills, right? Traditional surveys would typically report based on roles. And in this case, it will tell me what is the pay for a data scientist. But there is no further differentiation on the data scientist pay based on the various skill configuration that they may have. You may have some data scientists with Python programming skills and some others without. But what I really want to get to is what should I pay for a data scientist with the Python programming skill sets? Now, to get to this level of granularity, organizations would require non-traditional market database, such as SkillsVuture, which is a Willis Towers Watson software, and to complement the traditional surveys that they tend to purchase in order to help them make decisions around skill-based premium. That's a separate conversation for a different day, but in case you're interested, I've added a video link here to SkillsVuture so that you can check it out yourself. In the next slide, you will see that some of the skills that we are commanding a premium today, we have actually gathered some information from our clients, from the HR community, for those who have actually implemented some form of a skill-based policy to understand what is the magnitude of premium that they have applied on those skills. And this is really a summary of some of this more permanent skill category that typically commands a premium, and also the kind of magnitude or degree of premium that we see. So as you can see along the median column of this page, majority of respondents have applied a premium of about 10 to 15% for most of these skills. And this is policy level information, right? So as a policy, it's about 10 plus 10% or plus 15%. And these are all, rather niche and technical skills. If you were to purchase a market report from the traditional surveys, you most likely not be seeing information at this level of granularity. And this is where SkillsVuture can come in to help organizations understand that magnitude of premium based on different skill configurations. And sometimes you may even find that it's a discount and not a premium. So as I mentioned earlier, this is still an emerging trend, and most organizations are still on a role-based compensation framework. And I would say that there's nothing wrong with our traditional approach of looking at, a role-based compensation framework. And it's still very much relevant for the non-digital roles today. And the recent emphasis that we're starting to hear about rewarding for skill-based pay is largely driven by the fact that, this is really for the digital talent side of things, because we tend to want to price for the skills, which is very niche, rather than pricing for the role itself. That's kind of the main driver for skill-based pay. In the next slide, you will see that the traditional surveys would be able to still give us insights around premium, although it's a role-based premium, or we also call it functional premium. And here we have listed some roles with the highest pay premiums relative to an average job in the market. And we have also separated it by middle management roles and professional roles. And as evident from the analysis here, pay premiums may differ across different levels, even when it's from the same job family. Take cybersecurity as an example. In the middle management category, we see that cybersecurity managers tend to command a premium as high as 25% when compared to the general market. And in the professional category, it still shows up, as one of those job functions that commands a premium and a fairly strong premium. It's just that it's relatively lower at 15%. So just the idea of premium alone is not, a blanket approach for a premium by job family. It does have some differentiation across the different levels for the different kind of contribution as well. And if you look at the individual contributors role here, our data also revealed that your Agile Scrum Master, IT project management professionals are highly valued with rather high premium. There are also your usual suspects such as full stack developers for web pages, data scientists, and data engineers with all fairly substantial premiums. Right. And this is what, if we were to look into a traditional compensation survey, you will actually be able to get insights on, such kind of premium for different roles out there. And it can also be applicable for some of the non-digital roles. And in the next slide, you will see that when it comes to attracting and retaining these critical talent, pay is indeed a critical part of it. But organizations are starting to differentiate beyond pay. Based on our study, we see that yes, 41% of the organizations are providing enhanced base pay levels. 30% said that they offer enhanced long-term incentive awards. But it's not just about paying whatever is needed to secure a talent. Organizations today are often working with fixed salary budgets, right? And some are even talking about pay cuts or salary freezes. So where do I get that extra 15% or 10% that you're looking for, to kind of fund for all this premium that we are seeing out there? So there is a need to actually, yes, look at pay, but also consider outside of pay, what are the other things that we can do to differentiate. And over here, you will see that a large majority of organizations offer alternative work arrangements around, which is flexible work arrangements. And some others also approach it through enhanced L&D opportunities or dedicated recognition programs or dedicated career progression models or talent programs. One thing is, evident and clear to me here is that organizations are taking a segmented approach when it comes to differentiating what they can offer to hire and retain this critical talent. And in addition to pay and some of these talent management policies to support career progression, here we see that in the next slide, we'll see that well-being is also becoming a top priority in many organizations and also a way to differentiate themselves in the war for talent. So the pandemic definitely has a role to play in this, right? We hear that a large majority of employers here think that the pandemic has negatively impacted employee well-being at about 84%, and also on employee productivity at 79%. Right. Therefore, quite a large number of companies are planning to take action to address these well-being concerns, be it physical, emotional, financial, or social. In summary, when it comes to competing for critical skills, we think that a competitive pay is essential, and hence, we're all here talking about rewarding for skills. But differentiating on pay alone is not enough and definitely not sustainable. So there are other non-monetary rewards, right? Non-monetary aspects such as providing a workplace that allows for our talent to expand their minds, acquire new skills, and face challenging situations, work on interesting projects, for example, that will allow them to grow. And ultimately, this will then help drive the right employee experience. That brings us to the end of my sharing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sonia, for the very insightful presentation. I think indeed, knowing how much to pay for talent is an important question to many enterprises out there. And it's not just about how much to pay to recruit someone, but it's also how to reward employees who have picked up these skills, right? Especially when these skills are mission critical to the enterprise. And I suppose we would all agree that enterprises with progressive HR practices can be expected to do better, right, at attracting and retaining employees. I took a quick peek at the questions that have been streaming in, and I would say that in our dialogue, we will be able to address some of this question. So just sit tight, right? And then we'll be able to address some of these questions along the way. I thought at this point, it'll be useful for me to share some analysis that SkillsFuture Singapore has done on a similar topic. I believe this will allow us to have a deeper discussion on how much to reward for jobs and skills. So on this slide, SkillsFuture Singapore, our team of job skills analysts have researched into technology skills in jobs from both large and small enterprises. And we found that most jobs could be considered as technology-lite. And by tech-lite, what we mean is that people in these jobs use or apply technology in their work. And such roles could include data analysts, data market analysts, business analysts, so on and so forth, right? As opposed to tech-heavy job roles, which are your engineers, your data scientists, your UI UX designers, right? So going by this definition, Sonia, your presentation earlier had covered the job premium, right? For a number of job tech-heavy job roles. Could you comment on the job premium for tech-like job roles, right? The likes of data analysts, data market analysts, and how might their premium compare with the tech-heavy ones?
Yeah, and interestingly, we have done some digging into the market data to understand, is there any difference here for tech-heavy and tech-light roles? We tend to observe premiums more so for the tech-heavy type of skills. So when we say premium, it generally means that when we do the analysis, it shows up as approximately 10 to 20% above the general market pay levels, and sometimes more. But as shared in my earlier slide, right, we saw that typically premium is being reflected in roles such as data science and business intelligence, predictive analytics, data engineering, application development, machine learning, just to name a few. These are roles that are in the heart and center of driving digital transformation. And it's heavily sought after by many organizations across industries across the globe. So adding to this high demand, a limited supply of these skills, because they're so new and emerging and highly specialized, these skills then tend to command a premium in the market. And that's something that we see across industries and across the globe. Now for tech-light roles that are built around data and analytics, I'd say, these are such as your customer insights, market research, HR analytics, management data analysis, financial analysis. The premiums are less apparent. We actually look at those roles in the market and do that comparison. Although these roles, we say that they can also help to enable technology adoption and digital transformation, it is likely that the demand for these tech-light roles or skills hasn't outgrown the supply for these roles, right? We can still find these roles generally out there. We should also note that the analysis that we do here are based on market averages. And as organizations can be at different stages of their digital transformation journey, it is likely that we will see a mixed story out there when it comes to the demand for these tech-light roles, and therefore the premium that's available for these skills.
Oh, I see. That's interesting because at least for me, I thought there would be a general sense that data analysts, right, etc., would be quite hard to recruit, right? And yet this did not seem to translate into a pay premium for them, right? Maybe that assumption was wrong to start with. Just extending on this, I suppose what this may mean is that if we're talking about enterprises who are trying to recruit data analysts, right? These are your tech-like job roles. Then these enterprises should not be expecting to pay anything more than 10% of the general market rate. Am I right to say that?
I would say that the most ideal approach is for enterprises to look into benchmarking, right? To better understand exactly what are the pay levels for some of these jobs, including data analysts. There may be nuances across industries that we may not be seeing. So a data analyst in industry A versus industry B could be different. And therefore, the best approach is still ideally to look at the market for the industry. Having said that, short of a detailed benchmarking for a more precise market reference point, I would say offering 10% above the general market would most likely be a safe assumption and a good place to start to look for these data analysts.
I think that's a useful insight. And now that we've talked about jobs, right? I think we should touch a bit on skills as well. So going back to what SkillsFuture Singapore has done, right? We have also did some analysis on the skills profiles, right? Of just now what I shared earlier, tech-lite and tech-heavy job roles. And we found that certain skills appear to be more prevalent, right? In the tech-heavy, but not in the tech-lite, and vice versa, right? Was just thinking if we were to sort of overlay this data here, right? With the skills premium data from Willis Towers Watson, I'm just wondering if we could uncover further insights. For instance, right, would it be the case that skills premium are high, right, for skills that are prevalent? And if that's the case, that might suggest that there's a certain a level of mismatch, right? That is in terms of getting the skills to employers, right? Or will it be the inverse, where the skills premiums are high for skills that are scarce, right? Which then suggests that actually there's not many of the skills in the market to start with, and perhaps enterprises are better off sending their staff for training. I noted earlier in your presentation, you talked about scarcity of jobs being a determinant for the premium for the job. I'm just wondering whether that extends to then skills as well. Sonia, what's your take on this?
Yep, definitely. Based on the two scenarios we talk about, it is going to be more of the latter case, whereby you will see more skills premium for skills that are not found in many jobs, that are scarce. Because if you recall earlier when we talked about the survey findings, there are a few key defining characteristics of what makes a job hot, right? The first one that we saw most respondents said was scarcity. So typically in the new and emerging area, so whether or not these skills, new and emerging area, I would say these skills would be less widely available. You will see fewer of these kind of skills, given it's it's new and all that, which means that there is more demand than the supply for these skills. So which also means that it's going to be difficult for companies to look at attracting and retaining these skills. The other critical characteristics, other than availability of skills, is also how mission critical are these skills for a particular organization. It's just that most companies today are looking at digital transformation, and therefore digital skills become the mission critical skills. And this is mainly the two main reasons why we see companies are actually paying a premium for skills. It's highly shaped by the forces of demand for and supply of those skills. So when we see a huge surge in demand for a skill that is, at the same time, not so widely available, you don't see that in so many jobs, we can expect to pay a premium to acquire those skills.
So if I'm hearing that scarcity is going to be the primary driver, right, for a premium. If that's going to be the case, will it then be sort of a zero-sum game, right, for enterprises that are jostling, trying to secure these skills are so few to start with, and would it be better then for employers to be focusing on sending their workers for training instead, right, instead of trying to fight the market for the skills that are so few to start with?
Yeah, definitely. If you think about it, there is just a limited pool and you have more people asking for this kind of skill set. So there'll be some winners and some losers in this process. So there should be some elements of deliberate workforce planning for organizations to think about when I want to acquire these skills. Do I want to take a build strategy or a buy strategy, right? How would I look at getting these skills into the organization to meet the demands of the business and the competition? So definitely, I would say it's not just looking to pay for them. It's so hard to get them anyway. Maybe it's about a deliberate thinking through a workforce planning, buy, build, borrow kind of consideration.
I suppose it's going to be really up to the enterprises, right, to strike that balance between how much they want to focus on building, how much they want to focus on buying, right? And I think we could come back to this dialogue in a short while, right? I was just looking at the Q&A and the chats that were going on, and I thought there was this very interesting question from, I think she put it on the chat, from Jeanette Lim. She was asking if most companies start to pay 10% above the market to fight for talent, will there be a snowballing effect? And is that sustainable? I thought that was an interesting question. I'm just wondering, what's your take on this?
Yeah, it's the same for benchmarking, right? If everyone were to aim for the 75th percentile of the market, it will definitely just, it will just pile onto each other. Every year, the 75th percentile will then be higher than the last year. It will never equalize. But it's really the economics of talent demand and supply again. So if today I'm really looking for these talent and I'm not getting them, I'm going to pay, if it's mission critical, it's really important for the business to acquire the skills. I will be able to justify that investment to pay for these talent, and then you will see it becoming a sectoral wide trend. And a lot of companies, I understand, are facing a lot of pressure in this space. It's just in the last few years, it's just been so difficult to hire, and the salary levels are not what you have imagined before. It's already beyond recognition for some roles, but that's the reality. It will continue to intensify, like I shared earlier, as companies kind of embark on this journey of digital transformation. But until such day when the skill set that are unique, that are mission critical, becomes more available, where you have more supply for these skills, then our companies then have already done their digital transformation, and now it's business as usual maintenance mode, then you will start to see it dwindling down, and therefore the premium will then, hopefully normalize a little bit further.
Yeah. So there's some sort of corrective mechanism to be at work, right?
Yes.
That's interesting.
It probably will take a bit of time, but eventually it should normalize.
That's right. Now that we've talked a bit about premiums for jobs and skills, I thought we could maybe focus some attention on some of the other factors that you mentioned, right? That would help in attracting and retaining talent for enterprises. So Sonia, in two of your slides, you shared how organizations are starting to differentiate themselves, right? Beyond pay, for instance, offering talent development programs, enhanced learning and development opportunities, career progression models, and even free food, right? Which, apparently
not so relevant nowadays, but yes.
That's true. So based on what you have seen, right, thus far, given your experience in this field, in your opinion, which of these non-pay related perks have been effective, or rather most effective, right, in boosting talent attraction and retention? And just to add on to that, right, would you recommend then there could be a difference in approach for smaller enterprises vis-a-vis the larger ones, simply because, by and large, the smaller enterprises would have less resources to offer such perks?
I'd say, just looking at Willis Towers Watson's research in the last many years, I would say it's quite consistently shown that amongst many other reasons, the top driver and the key driver for employee attraction and retention revolves around two themes. Firstly is pay progression, which is your pay related parts, right? And secondly, what we always hear is about career progression. Other reasons are, my working relationship with my managers, my opportunity to, learn and develop. But pay and career progression are often, the two key demands of employees when it comes to, keeping them around or actually bringing them into an organization. So for many, we know that pay is a hygiene factor, and there's a certain baseline to be met. And generally, the expectations are for it to be fair and competitive. But beyond pay, the next important thing that organizations should focus on is around careers. And career progression here does not necessarily mean promotion, right? Or the next big title. And that's a concept that is not maybe foreign for some organizations, not so foreign for some others. And this is something that a lot of organizations are still trying to get right. And larger enterprises may be able to afford more grades and more promotions, But at the end of the day, there is a limit to that kind of vertical progression that you could offer. And there is a need to put in place a robust career framework, which provides, the right foundation and also clarity for managers to have conversations around career growth, new skills to acquire, or new ways to contribute to the organization. In order to, in addition to providing pay and career progression like I've just shared, there has also been a rather recent shift towards emphasizing on employee well-being, which is another non-pay related perks, right? As I've shared just now, this includes well-being around physical, which is around your health, mental, your mental resilience, stress management, financial around financial security, insurance coverage, and also social well-being. Social well-being would be things like recognition, inclusiveness, diversity, and these are all non-pay related initiatives that organizations can embark on and are increasingly focusing on in order to differentiate themselves from their competitors.
So I'll just circle back to my second question, which was would you say that then for the smaller enterprises, right, are they sort of at a disadvantage when it comes to providing some of these things that you spoke about, career progression, and a sense of well-being, right, for employees?
Larger enterprises, no doubt, they would have a benefit or an advantage in terms of larger headcount, more resources, potentially more grades that they can offer to the employees. But like I said, career progression does not necessarily mean promotion, right? So for smaller organizations, their in a way advantage is that they can be more fluid. There's more fluidity, and there could be more opportunities for employees to get involved in different areas of work, different projects and different assignments. So therefore, smaller organizations can actually focus on providing these opportunities for meaningful and challenging work for the employees. As for a sense of well-being, I think it has less bearing on whether this is a large or small enterprise, but more dependent on exactly what the enterprise is doing in order to provide employees, with the right emphasis on well-being. The fact that they agree that the organization is actually focusing on their well-being, and the policies that that comes along with those initiatives.
So I think I'm heartened to hear that, because I think it's also reassuring to know that, right, enterprises, regardless of their size, they do have levers at their disposal beyond just pay to attract and retain talent, right? For example, in the smaller startup firms or SMEs, it's the excitement trying to get things going, being involved in all parts of operations, right? And that appeals to a certain profile of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think our discussion thus far has covered what enterprises could do to better attract and retain talent. So for enterprises who are keen, right, to start to embark on some of these progressive HR practices, what would then be your advice to them to help them to take the first step? And for enterprises that have started, right, would you have any further advice for them? Maybe to avoid certain pitfalls along the way that you have seen or come across.
Yep. I'm going to share not just the first step, but maybe some of the considerations that I think are key enablers, to actually look at a skill-based pay strategy. One of the first things that organizations should consider before embarking on a skill-based pay strategy is, first of all, to understand the demand for and the supply of these skills within the organization itself. So in order to do that, the first step, which is to actually look at your current and future skill requirements. What do you need as an organization? And this would involve understanding your business strategy, your direction of growth of the organization, and therefore based on that, kind of map out the capabilities that you need as an organization and the skills that you need, based on those capabilities that you've identified to drive the business today and also, in the future. So this is kind of now and medium to long-term planning of what skill you require, the demand of skills of the company, right? the next thing to look at is to design a knowledge architecture. Knowledge architecture sound like a big conceptual word, but to put simply, it is really to develop a model or a framework to help organizations track and measure knowledge and skills. So these should be skills that can be mapped back to the business strategy that the organization is trying to drive. And now we have almost like a catalog of the knowledge and skills that I would need to kind of deliver on this business strategy. Right. And then the next thing to do is to look at your supply, because we understand the demand today and the future. We have a way to kind of catalog these skills. The next thing is to really understand the supply of these knowledge and skills that you have today with the pool of employees that you already have. So what organizations will need to do is to map these employees to the predefined set of skills. So then organizations can understand what skills do I have readily available already in the organization today, and also for the future requirements based on the direction that we need to grow. Do we have those skills today? Or do we see any kind of gap? So when you compare the demand and supply, you will see if we have gap either currently, or maybe there is a gap, but maybe in 3 years. So through that, organizations can then look at closing the gap, right? So depending on how urgent is it to close this gap. If it's less urgent, meaning it's a future requirement, or perhaps it's a skill that we don't have today, but it's not difficult to train up those skills, perhaps it's to operate a certain software and so on, then I would say it's a build strategy that organizations should think about, which is, through upskilling initiatives, reskilling initiatives, continuous learning, skill building, and so on. So you can provide work experiences for the employees to start building on these skills in order to meet the future requirements, or not so far down the line requirements, if this is something that we have enough building time. And I understand that through this there are training courses that are subsidized by SkillsFuture. So these are some of the training aspects for the build strategy, right? So, but if let's say I have a gap, and it's an immediate need, and it takes a long time to develop those skills. I need to study for 3 years in the university, for example. Then this kind of skills is probably better for organizations to think about either buying, which means you have to pay for it, or borrowing, which it could be a rotation or secondment or talent mobility kind of initiatives that organization can consider. Or even if you talk about gig employment, you could also look at contract staff for these kind of skill gaps. So if you're looking to buy, one of the things that you should think about is to look at what is the market paying, right? So this is where we talk about the evidence-based approach, looking at the market data, and traditional, compensation surveys is a good place to start. And if you want to get to skill-specific premium, then SkillsView is the other angle that you can take. And then also try focusing on the value that the roles can bring to the organization. If you're talking about mission critical roles, it's not so much about what the market is paying. I mean, it is important because it is a huge cost, right, to some organizations. But if this is someone who is going to change the way the game is played, or the rainmaker for the organization, then we should also look at the value that these roles can bring, and I would then pay the price in the hope of the value that the role can deliver. And in order to mitigate some of the risk that involve, right, I would say then it's about setting the right expectations, setting the right objectives, goals for these kind of roles. And if it didn't work out in 1 year or 2 years, because you're already paying a big price tag for these roles, organizations then should then be ready to cut loose and look for some other roles that would hopefully can take the company forward. And also, even if you were to buy these talent, the pay angle is one aspect, right? And we also mentioned just now that there is the non-pay component to it. So focusing on the career progression, focusing on learning and development opportunities, or through special projects, special assignments, training courses, or focusing on the well-being, so that employees feel like they're being taken care of, which is increasingly something that, whether it's digital talent or non-digital talent, we're seeing, employees are expecting some level of well-being being a focus from their employers. So those are kind of, a very long story of how you can enable something like that, a skill-based pay. And the other thing that companies can think about if I want to embark on a journey like that is to pilot and scale. So I might want to start, this whole identifying demand, supply, gap closing strategy for one part of the organization that's quite critical. And then, once it's successful, I can scale it up. If it's not successful, I can tweak it. And that's what we have seen some other organizations that have already started doing some of this. It's all, trial and error. We all learn through that process. And I would say pilot and scale is kind of, a good strategy to take this forward.
Thanks for sort of putting everything in a framework in a couple of minutes. I think there's definitely a lot deeper to this, right?
Yes.
And I'm sure that interested party could get in touch with you, right, to find out a bit more. I just want to pick up 2 points that you mentioned, which I thought was very relevant and worthwhile to re-emphasize. Right? One is the point on really not trying to do everything at once, especially for something humongous and big, like transformation across the whole organization. Right? It's always better to start small, right? Do a pilot, right? Maybe a sort of a sandbox, and then have dedicated teams to really see it through. And then step by step, once there's a certain level of success, we scale up. Right? So I thought that was a useful point to reiterate. The second point I picked up, which I think was equally very important, is the point that I think you were trying to make on focusing on the value, right? That the recruiter role would bring, rather than on its cost, right? The cost of recruiting someone else. I think this mindset shift from viewing recruitment as a cost to viewing recruitment as an investment, right? I think it's an important one for enterprises. And I would then extend to say the same for training, right? We should really be viewing training as an investment, right? Rather than as a cost, right? And I think doing that is a crucial first step for enterprises who are really keen and sincere on embarking on progressive HR practices that we know is really a sort of what differentiates you from the others in securing the really very scarce talents out there. I think at this point, I would like to turn to the Q&A, right, to see if we could address some of these questions there. I saw a couple of interesting ones.
Yep. I'm also looking through some of these questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking at the one by Evelyn K, which is right up on the top, right, with quite a number of votes, right. I think that's a very pertinent question there, right. So she's saying that several of these roles actually came out not too long ago, right, and then yet organizations are already asking for candidates with a certain number of years of experience, right. And it seems like it's a sort of a by default kind of criteria, right? You need how many years of experience, come in. But some of this criterion inadvertently would sort of curtail the candidate pool for the employers themselves. I'm just wondering, what is your take on this in trying to shift employers' mindset away from using some of this very, I would say, shortcut criteria like education qualification, you need this, a degree, right? Or you need X number of years experience, right? Is there any way that we could start to shift away from some of this default kind of criteria to something that's more objective, or rather more objective to why we're even recruiting such a person in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. You just touched on the key point on why are we recruiting such a person, and how do we know why? Is the very long approach that I've just kind of mentioned, the 5 steps, to really see what you need, right? What is my business strategy? And because of this business strategy, as an organization, what kind of capabilities I need? And then through that, what kind of skills at a job level, employee level, what kind of skill sets I need my employees to have to make sure that I have these capabilities as an organization to make sure that I can deliver on the business strategy. So the main thing here is to look at what we need, aligning it to the strategy, and from there the linkage to what's the education qualification or number of years of experience. There can be a linkage, but it's actually good to really revisit that and test that out. Is it really this number of years? And then in terms of the education, we also heard of this whole idea of skill adjacencies, right? So maybe there are certain other skill sets that is somewhat related, but not entirely, 100% match. But for these employees who have adjacent skills, maybe it will take half the time for them to pick up the skills that you're trying to acquire. So maybe it's not about buying from scratch. It's also not about building from scratch. It could be building when I'm already halfway there for those skills that are adjacent to the skills that you need to acquire. So really to take, a deliberate review, rethink of what your requirements are. How does that tie back to what you need as an organization? And ideally, you have this framework, this knowledge architecture, I call it, to actually help you map out what are the skill sets that you need versus employees that can supply those skills. And then through that, you have a very systematic way to actually see I have it or I don't have it, but I need this number of months to build these skills, and therefore what's my strategy? Buy, build, borrow. So that's like a workforce planning kind of angle to looking at skills and deciding on what kind of strategy to buy and what kind of requirements would you actually list out. But just to add on that, I think organizations would then need to think harder. If you can't really get what you want as an ideal, your wish list, what is the next best? I think a lot of companies have to get to the next best because either you are outpriced or it's just not available.
Yeah, so we're just looking at, I think there are many questions and I don't think we're able to address them all, but I did see some questions that resonate a lot with me, and I think these are perennial questions, all right? For instance, there was one on, it was a comment of sort, it was one on, there's this a perennial fear that if I were to train someone, what if he leaves me, all right? How do I make sure that this person that I train stay, all right? I think this is a very real concern locally, and in some parts of the world, I think we see less of this because for some reason, it has been sort of entrenched in the culture, right? There's this culture of training for the industry and so on. But I don't think Singapore is quite there yet. Where we are today, I'm just wondering how will we be able to address this very real fear or concern by employers that, what if he leaves me? Then all my money is like, all my investment on this person is sort of down the drain.
Yeah. I would take a very high level answer for something like that, because this is a very real situation. We hear that a lot, and it's not just at all sorts of scenarios, right? It's not just about looking for hiring skills, training them. In a day-to-day working relationship, should I worry about my team actually leaving me because these are really good team members? Even just talking about talent mobility, you're not sharing resources. So this is something that is quite common, but it's also coming down to the kind of mindset that you want to have when you look at employee and employee development, because the better off your employees are, and the more knowledgeable they are, yes, they can be commanding a premium outside. They can be more sought after, right, by your competitors. Then you also should think about the flip side. The better they are, the better I can grow as an organization, because now I have these skill sets within the organization. So the focus should be more on, I'm going to develop my employees, and I'm also going to make sure that they are aligned in terms of what the organization is trying to drive. We have common goal and common objective. I have the right tools that I've put in place to make sure that the employees are engaged. So it's going to be a larger picture that organizations need to see, because if I start to think about maybe I shouldn't train or enable excessively because they may leave me, then it's a very limiting approach to the entire problem.
Yeah, I think it's really, as what you put, right, it's really a mindset shift. And if we're able to see beyond our own organization, that, at some point talent moves around, right? And because they move around a lot, and if everyone's sort of play ball, then really we will be able to lift the whole industry together. I think we have only time for just one more question, and I would like to just picked up this question from an anonymous attendee. The question is, how does skills premium affect morale of other employees in company? I think the context of this question is probably The assumption here, or true or not, is that some of these skills premium are only going to be focusing on very niche set of skills, right? And if it comes to be known to the rest of the employees that, for some reason you have that skill and you are like getting a lot more pay than me, how does that affect the rest of the employees, right?
Yeah.
So, and there was a related question from Audrey Taylor, right? I thought it's also an interesting one, whether we, for companies that have already embarked on some of these practices, whether there are possible spillover effects, right? I think what she meant could be that because I saw that my colleagues were enjoying such a sort of a bigger pay package, right? It inspired me, right, to want to better myself as well. Were there some of these things that you have seen from the companies that you work with?
Definitely, and in fact, for those organizations who have done something around, I see a need to pay a premium for skills. Then the next question is the whole governance on those kind of policies, right? How do I know what are the skills that should command a premium versus those that are not? What happens when a hot job is no longer hot? What happens if an employee moves from a hot job to a not hot job? All these kind of questions are, the next thing that will come up, because when you want to implement something like that, there's a lot to think about, and the implication, the spillover effects to other employees. But at the center of this is the principles that you adopt, firstly, to pay for these skills. So what are the deciding criteria for jobs that would command a premium, right? Because it is market forces. It is not, about whether I prefer this employee or that. It's a fair in the sense that it is market it's played out in the market that way. And if you are not, paying for that premium, then you stand to lose out as compared to other companies who are paying for those premium. So that whole policy of identifying the skills that will command a premium, why this job is part of it and why the other job is not, is an important part of the process. And I would say that it's not something that HR can do by themselves. It's something that, it's going to be in close collaboration with the business, because this has very close linkage to the overall business strategy, right? This is the direction that the organization is going. If you can actually explain the reasons and therefore the capabilities and the skills that you need, and you're looking for these skills, I'm pretty sure it will be not that difficult to convince the rest of the employees that we share a common goal. We need the company to grow, and without these skills, we are kind of stuck in where we are at. So it's to take it forward, and if the company does well, you will do well. So I think that's the kind of messaging, the policy that goes into it, the governance of the principles. All those should be considered to make sure that it doesn't come across as a preferential treatment and someone is better off because I happened to study the wrong course in my uni days, So that's something that is important for companies to consider.
Thanks for that. And I think we could go on and on, but time really flew by quickly. We are almost at the end of our webinar, and we will need to wrap up quite soon, right? Before I head back to Kelsey, our MC, I'll just like to thank Sonia for her time today with us. And I hope this session has been most useful for all of us who are listening in, as it has been for me. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you very much.
Kelsey, over to you.
All right, thank you, Edwin. The time has passed really quickly with such engaging and insightful discussions. I have learned something new today, and I hope all attendees have had some useful takeaways as well. As this webinar comes to a close, we would like to invite all attendees to please complete a quick survey. Your feedback will be kept confidential and will assist greatly in the improvement of future webinars. Nat, may I trouble you to switch to the QR code? Thank you. Yeah, so I will give everyone a few moments to scan this QR code while I share some closing comments. A reminder that this webinar session will be hosted on the SkillsFuture portal, SSG's LinkedIn page, and SSG's YouTube channel for future viewing. If you are interested in finding out more about SSG's initiatives, the next slide shows actually a gathering of resources catering to both enterprises and individuals for your perusal after this event. While you are still here, let me also share that SSG has an upcoming webinar on the care economy happening on the 31st of August. No worries if you are still working on the survey, as these slides will be sent to all attendees via email over the next few days for your reference. Once again, my name is Kelsey, and together with Glenn and Matthew, we would like to thank Edwin, our SSG moderator, and Ms Sonia Liew from Willis Towers Watson for generously sharing their knowledge and expertise with us today. With that, thank you all for joining us today. Stay safe, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.